internet. Of course, you can get it through. Perhaps Stan would make that available to you. Under any circumstances, NSSM was one of the most important documents that you'll find. It is available on the internet. Thank God for the internet, because it gives us an opportunity, at least for those of us who are among the elite of the alert, to understand that there really are these forces out there. And then, of course, in 1979, a man went into an office of one of the major granite producers in a place called Elberton, Georgia. And he announced that his name was R.C. Christian. But that wasn't his real name. It was a phony name. He announced he represented a secret group that wanted to leave a message for humanity. And he wanted them to erect a great monument. And he was willing to pay whatever it cost. Now, they went to Elberton, Georgia, presumably because they had granite there. They mined granite, and they used this for gravestones. And those gravestones go all throughout the country. But this would be where they had decided, and I suspect there may have been other reasons why they picked Elberton, to erect something that has come to be known as the American Stonehenge, or the Georgia Guidestones. How many here do know about the document? Well, some of you do. Most people, of course, and this is a very well educated audience, you know, the elite of the alert. But most people have never heard of the Georgia Guidestones, and they're on these 4 great granite slabs in 8 different languages, in English and Russian and Spanish and Swahili and Hebrew and Arabic and Chinese, and one other language are the 10 commandments that come from the very pit of hell. And the first commandment is, maintain the world population at 500 million in constant balance with nature. Now, that may not sound too bad unless you stop and think. Let's see, there's over 6 billion people in the world. They want to maintain the population of 500 million. How do you do that? Well, you've got to get rid of over 90% of the population. It's the only way you can possibly maintain the population at 500 million in constant balance with nature. The message on the Guidestones has to do with birth control. It has to do with a new spirituality. It has to do with world government. And it is very similar to the Earth Charter that was written subsequently by that great American patriot, Mikhail Gorbachev, along with Maurice Strong, who headed the first Earth Summit meeting, and Stephen Rockefeller, who is certainly, I think, will lead the Rockefeller clan once David Rockefeller passes on to his just rewards. Incidentally, those of you who don't know, David Rockefeller has two daughters who are dedicated Marxists and supporters of Fidel Castro. Why would that be? Why would the Rockefeller, head of the Rockefeller clan, the most powerful family in the world, along with the Rothschilds, whose wealth far exceeds that of Warren Buffett and Bill Gates? I mean, you've heard that they're the 2 wealthiest people in the world, but that's what you're supposed to believe in. The Rockefeller wealth is in hundreds of trillions of dollars. But you see, you're not to know that. And, of course, why would they be working with Mikhail Gorbachev, who is the former head of the Soviet KGB, who is the former dictator of Russia? Why would capitalists like Maurice Strong, multi-billionaire, and Stephen Rockefeller work with the former head of the Soviet Union? And why is Mikhail Gorbachev such a powerful man today? And they have written the Earth Summit, and it's very, very similar to the message you'll find on the Georgia Guidestones. Well, the Georgia Guidestones were constructed to this day. Nobody knows who R.C. Christian really is. Nobody knows who the secret group is that financed this monument. It is there. Satanists meet there regularly. UFOs have been known to hover over the top of the Guidestones. If you go to the library, as I have, and you'll find the story about the very night when the Georgia Guidestones were dedicated, and when a witch named Jody, and after everybody had gone home from the celebration, went down to her van and put on a purple robe and went up to the top of the hill and walked around those Guidestones and marked a pentagram on every one of them with the red dirt that she was able to get from the ground. This is a satanic monument. And there really are satanic monuments, and the fact that you've never heard of that simply reflects the truth of whatever Bernays told us in his book, Propaganda. Well, it was, of course, in 1973 that we had Roe versus Wade. You remember Roe versus Wade? When the Supreme Court suddenly found that a woman had a right to an abortion, to kill the child within their body. And then, of course, the 1981, why a new epidemic suddenly appeared. And it was a strange epidemic. It was called the gay plague, or GRID. And then it came to be known as the acquired immunodeficiency disease. And you've probably heard a lot of things about it, but you know there are 8 types of this disease. There's not one, there are 8 different types of this disease. All occurred spontaneously all over the world. Isn't that a coincidence? Yeah. I wonder how that happened. The United States Public Health Service blocked the implementation of the standard public health techniques that could have stopped the epidemic. I know because I led the battle within California and in some respects across the country, along with a handful of other people, all of whom had their lives destroyed. And why God spared me and I wasn't destroyed, I don't know, but I did survive. But we could have stopped the epidemic very early on. All we had to do was identify who had the disease, try to stop them from spreading it, and we didn't do that. Why? Today, over 500,000 Americans are dead. Half of them are homosexuals, over half are homosexuals. Now, of course, the disease is predominantly a black disease in America. 60 to 65% of all new cases are in blacks. They only make up 10 to 12% of the population. Why do you think that is? 20 million people have died throughout the world. Another 40, 50 million are infected. We don't know because we're not trying to stop the disease. In 1991, the UNESCO Courier, which is published by the United Nations, carried an article about Jacques Cousteau. You know that Jacques Cousteau, that wonderful fellow who swims with the dolphins and the fishies, and we just love Jacques Cousteau. And he was quoted as saying this: "It's terrible to have to say this, but the world population must be stabilized. And to do this, we must eliminate 350,000 people per day. This is so horrible to contemplate that we shouldn't even say it." And it is so horrible you shouldn't even say it, but there are people who intend to do that, to eliminate 350,000 people a day. It was in 1992 at the State of the World Forum meeting in San Francisco. One of my friends was there, and she has tapes of this, when Dr. Sam Keen got up, one of the intellectual leaders of the world, people who worship a different God, who said this: "We must speak far more clearly about sexuality and contraception, about abortion, about values that control population, because the ecological crisis, in short, is the population crisis. Cut the population by 90%, and there aren't enough people left to do a great deal of ecological damage." And his remarks were met with applause